same year that the hydroelectric plant was completed as well.
Wow.
This really was, like I said, the greatest engineering feat that was built to irrigate the lands here. I told you that the companies split in 1907, so we had the Hanford Irrigation and Power Company and the White Bluffs Irrigation Company. Well, the White Bluffs Irrigation Company in 1907 built their own pump house, and they were going to sell irrigation water. Their pump house was gasoline powered, and it burned down very quickly. They ended up having to contract with Haynes and his group for irrigation water for the White Bluffs customers.
Oh.
It must have been pretty bad having to come back to the people you split with. Well, the pump house was operated by a gentleman by the name of Sam Allard. Sam arrived here in the United States about 1908, and his first job was to help complete the hydroelectric dam. But then he very shortly came here and was responsible for the pump house. And he operated this pump house until he retired at the age of 81 in 1941. So he was here a long time. He actually had already lived his life. He was 50 years old when he came to Washington. He'd been living in Minnesota. He had 4 children. Unfortunately, his first wife had died in childbirth in the late 1890s. And he remarried and had a daughter with his new wife, Delia. And so it was really his new wife, Delia, and the daughter, Anna, who moved out here from Minnesota. They had about 200 acres of farmland off in this direction and a very nice house. In fact, they had a stone home that looked a lot like Brueggemann's home, probably built by the same gentleman. Sam, though, was a tinkerer. He was really into mechanical arts, and his love was the pump house. Delia was the farmer, the cook. She ran the farm with an iron fist, and it was very successful. Sam and Delia had problems, though. They raised their grandkids, and the grandkids remember them fighting a lot. But they don't know what they were fighting about, because they were both French Americans or French Canadians, and they fought in French. So when the kids were asked, why did your grandma and grandpa separate? Kids were like, we don't know what they were fighting about. But they did. They divorced in 1926. And Delia took the farm, which Sam really didn't want. And Sam moved into a little small house on the other side of the pump house. Now when Sam came here in 1908, this area was called Coyote Rapids. And when we walk down to the river, I'll point out why it was called Coyote Rapids. But Sam was a very well-respected, well-liked guy. He was just a real stand-up kind of person. He was a member of the Grange. He was a Benton County Commissioner. And they renamed this area Allard in his honor in 1912. And there were probably a handful of houses here. There was a general store. It was a whistle stop on Sagebrush Annie, since it's right here. And it was kind of a fun, nice little town.
And it was called Hanford?
Nope, they changed it to Allard in Sam's honor.
Oh.
So it was called Allard since then, and this was called the Allard Pump House as a result.
Oh.
Now there were 2 large pumps in the pump house. Pumps could pump about 60,000 gallons of water per minute.
Wow.
And yeah, they were serious pumps. And raise that water up 60 feet into these 2 concrete ditches. This was the headwater of what would become known as the Hanford Ditch. Because it turns out that Haynes had bought up about 32,000 acres of land south of White Bluffs. He was a land speculator, just like Thomas Karsten. And he bought up that 32,000 acres with the prime reason of establishing a new town there. He was going to break up that 32,000 acres into little farm lots. He was going to provide people with electricity and irrigation water.
Huh.
So,
Nancy,
yes.
is that a fish?
Where?
Out in the
In
river?
the water.
Oh no, that was like that this weekend. It's like the water level's down to a point where the water's hitting a rock or a
'cause it doesn't look
stick or something.
Yeah, it doesn't look consistent.
No, I know. Somebody else had asked about that.
Okay.
So the water would be pumped up into these 2 structures that came around the corner and came together to form the ditch. Now when they first fired up the pumps and filled up this ditch, they could watch the water run down there towards where Haynes was going to make all his money. But the water disappeared into the ground almost immediately. Well, it was like, well, that's okay. It will seal. You know, that was sort of expected. But they ran the water, and it never sealed. The sand was so fine here, and there was no clay in it. He ended up having to concrete 17 miles of this ditch.
Wow.
That added another year to construction and a huge amount of expenditure. But he finally got it completed in 1909 and was able to deliver irrigation water down to the new town that he established south of White Bluffs. We'll talk more about that later. So he operated this pump house until 1941. Oh, and I should say, so he and Delia divorced in 1926. He remarried in 1932 to a woman by the name of Hortense Fox, and they lived in that little house there by the pump house. When he retired in 1941, he was allowed to remain in the house until the government arrived in 1943. And like the Brueggemans, he was served an eviction notice and forced to leave. And he and Hortense relocated to Prosser. He died, unfortunately, about 3 years later at the age of 84.
I believe the sign up there said 86.
86. I was just trying to do the math on it. So he retired at 81, left in 43, and died in 45. So
These guys were tough.
they were. I mean, he worked until he was 81, but of course it was his love. He just
But they
really
also
loved
came
the
out
pump.
here and did all this with what we consider primitive tools.
Yes, yeah.
They had backhoes and
Well, they did have some automated equipment. Not in 1908, though. Later on they did. So a lot of this was hand dug. And of course, we're talking 17 miles this water had to flow by gravity. So they had to follow the contour of the land and know exactly where to put the ditch. And of course the ditch had laterals, so he was able to provide irrigation water to farms along the way and to White Bluffs.
For free or for a
Oh
fee?
no, it's a money-making proposition. Yeah. He
Was
was
these run by fuel, gas, or
electricity.
electricity?
So that was why he built that hydroelectric plant. Now this is where, this pipe you can see here, this is where he siphoned off a little bit of water for himself. Right? This was where his farm was.
Oh.
And so he was able to get some water himself out
metal.
here. It is.
Oh.
So people are often surprised at all of the building material that was used here.
Yeah.
It all came from, or not all, but a lot of it came from Sears and Roebuck.
Oh.
And delivered here by
Barge?
Sagebrush Andy. Yeah, yeah.
figured it was barge. No?
Some of it probably came by river, but a lot of it came by train. And of course, that was a big war. The river traffic versus the
Barge
railroad traffic. Yeah, yeah. People started fighting for customers. Eventually, the railroad won. And that had a big impact at White Bluff.
Did you say this is still operational? This pump
No,
house?
this pump house is not. The one that we passed over by the B reactor is still operational.
But it's on government property.
So they've used
It's
this
used
one.
by the government.
It's still in operation.
Yeah. So it's used over in the 200 area. The water is.
Well, did they use this when they first come here then? To start
This
building?
this pump house?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they use this at all or not.
They just built that one right away.
Yeah, I think they probably built that one right
Probably.
away.
So they needed a tremendous amount of water.
So we're not really allowed to go too much further, but I wanted you to see the rapids in the river. Those rapids are called Coyote Rapids. You can just begin to see them over the grass there. That
Yeah.
was a very culturally significant location for the Wanapums. They practiced a religion called the Washani religion, or the Dreamer religion. And it was started by a gentleman by the name of Smohala, who was born probably around 1815. He was their prophet, and he traveled up and down the west coast. He actually traveled all the way down to Mexico, searching for the way to live. And he thought he'd come up with the answer, and he came back here and he spread his religion to the Wanapums and other tribes. And he believed that the white people, the black people, the Chinamen who came, all of those people were sent here to punish them.
Oh, wow.
They were being punished because they weren't living the way their ancestors had lived. And so Smohalla said that if we go back to living the way our ancestors lived, all of these people will go away and everything will be much better. And it was called the drummer religion as well because it involved a lot of drumming and chanting. And Coyote Rapids was where Smohalla came for his vision quest, his most important vision quest. And so this was considered very sacred to the Native Americans. And we've been asked to respect the fact that this is significant to them and to not go all the way down to the river here. There are also a number of burial grounds between here and K East and K West. You see K West here, the closest reaction.
So the river, you can still boat or
The river is open to the public.
open to the
It's
public?
up to the high water mark you can go, but you can't come on land here and go above the high water mark
Oh, okay.
because this is not only sacred to the Native Americans, but this is also still the Hanford site.
Oh, okay. So if you docked over on that side, you can go up there
Yeah.
5 feet
So
or
the
something.
other side of the river actually is part of that Hanford Reach National Monument that I mentioned earlier,
Wow.
that 200,000 acres. And it protects the last free-flowing stretch of the Columbia River.
Oh,
So the McNary Dam, which is located down near Umatilla, backs up the water all the way to Richland. And that is technically considered to be Wallula Lake. Up above Richland, the water is unimpacted by the McNary Dam. Just below the Priest Rapids Dam, which is up and around the corner, is the start of the Hanford Reach, the last 51-mile free-flowing stretch of the Hanford River. It is home to some
Columbia
of,
River?
yes, it is home to some of the best salmon spawning grounds
Oh.
in the state,
Down all along here, huh?
all along here.
So it goes from here clear to McNary Dam
to Richland.
to Richland.
That's the reach. Yeah.
Oh,
And so the Hanford Reach National Monument has preserved that by saving the lands on both sides. When the government started releasing some of these lands that had been used for the security buffer, all the commercial people started going, oh yeah, we can dredge the river now and bring barge traffic further up. Right now, boat traffic can only go as far as Richland because the river gets so shallow.
yeah,
So there were plans to dredge the river,
yeah.
dig up all those salmon spawning grounds called redds, and they were going to also build another dam.
Oh,
So grassroots effort was put in place though to
protect that.
protect it, and they were successful.
Huh.
So that was in 2000 that Clinton established
Huh.
Hanford Reach National Monument.
Do people kayak this now, or
Yep.
They
yeah,
do?
So a fun thing to do if you've got a good day and not much wind, you can put your canoe or kayak in at the Vernita Bridge. There's a boat put in near there, and you can float this whole stretch of the Columbia River.
Oh, cool.
A lot of people break it up into 2 days. When we go over to the White Bluffs Ferry Landing, you'll see there's a public landing on the other side of the river, and it's a good place to stop and spend the night if you want, and then continue on down to Richland.
Oh, go clear to Richland.
Yeah.
That's quite a trip journey.
It's 51 miles.
Oh.
About, yeah.
Kind of built this thing on
When a large
sacred
rope
land. Is that a fact?
That's a fact. You know,
So then we didn't consider it
well,
sacred land?
so like I
or-
said, a lot. No, you know, it's like it seems like the government is more attuned to obeying the treaties than the public was. I think the public tended to disregard the treaty because there's a number of places where some of these early settlers did disregard those treaties, like building this powerhouse or the pump house right there where Smohalla had his vision quest. But you know, once the government acquired the land, they had to sort of toe the line and have been pretty respectful.
Kind of amazed they didn't tear down the pump house, considering the Native Americans.
So it's, you know, we're still not sure why the structures that remain. You know, why was the warehouse not torn down? And why, you know, the bank, people speculate that the bank was not torn down.
Because it was a
because
bank.
Well,
Bakers.
Actually, it turns out it was the bank closed in 1941. It was a post office when the government arrived, but it was a concrete built structure, concrete block structure. It was built pretty well, and I think the government decided it might be more trouble than it was worth, so it really just left it. And it could be the same reason that structure's still there. It would have been pretty difficult to put it down as well.
It looks like a little castle.
It does.
If you look at the emblem of the
Sign on the driver's
U.S. Army Engineers, it's almost the exact
left side
duplicate
of
of
Can
what
see
they
it.
By
have.
golly, you're right.
Yeah.
Again, they're on the
Just
two
don't let me
towers.
forget it.
Yeah,
I mean,
two
I liked
towers,
it there because I
but
would
they
see
got
it.
the little parapets with the